for coming to this event. Notes from the undergrad apropos of the new publishing. We are here with Miette Gillette, the publisher of Whiskey Tit. Whiskey Tit attempts to restore degradation and degeneracy to the literary arts. We are unwilling to sacrifice intellectual rigor, unrelenting playfulness, and visual beauty, often leading to texts that would be otherwise abandoned in the homogenized literary landscape. In a world gone mad, our refusal to make this sacrifice is an act of civil service and civil disobedience alike. And we also have, give me a second. They lost the paper with all this stuff.
Your phone died?
No, it's just like okay, and we have three authors here. Stefan O'Rack. Stefan O'Rack lives in New York City because it makes sense. In the 1940s, his grandparents fled Ukraine for NYC. Otherwise, he may have never been born. As a child, some neurologists suspected that he had hypergraphia, but it turned out that he had other issues. He graduated high school a criminal musician and later got a master's in cinema studies from Tisch. He's worked as an archival director, film professor, record producer, experimental music programmer, and bartender. Stefan self-published his first novel, New Roses, which he finished in Salzburg, Austria, and at Monet's house in Giverny. He now owns a bar in the East Village, a few blocks from where he resides, and is 35 years old at the time of this writing. He is thrilled that his second novel, Adventures of Bastard and N.E., will be published by Whiskey Tit in February 2018. Okay.
Nice job updating your bio.
Yeah, I know. That happens.
We also have NDF Wedge. Disturb the comfortable, comfort the disturbed. She's from a little town in upstate New York, and her memoir, Nick Point, was a finalist for the 2017 Tarpaulin Sky Book Prize. Pedophiles, mental illness, sneaking around, she's your gal. She joined up with Whiskey Tit Books in 2018 and is thrilled to be in the company of Miette Gillette, Joey Truman, and Stefan Rack. And then we also have Joey Truman. Joey Truman is a writer and artist based in Brooklyn. He performs with the bands or Escalators and Soft Inserts. His upcoming books from Whiskey Tit Press include Cooking Cockroach, A Guide to Modern Poverty, a cookbook/memoir, and Cockknocker, a mystery novel. And so all of the writers will be reading for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we can open it up for questions and discussion. So I'll let you guys go ahead.
Do you want to say anything?
I want you to read.
Do you
No.
want to say anything?
I want you to read.
All right.
This is Joey Truman.
I'm Joey Truman.
Use the microphone.
I don't know how to.
Then just speak loudly.
I'll speak loud.
Do you want me to turn it on? Is it down?
No, it's just I can't do both at the same time. Or I could try. You called him. Test. Maybe.
Just read loudly.
All right. He called him Dr. Sunshine. He had white feathers and a yellow breast. He's a pretty bird. Whitey took him everywhere. He rode on top of his milk cart. His first mate, Whitey would think. Lately it felt like a pirate, Whitey had. Change had come over him. Whitey didn't know it though. He'd been walking down the street, minding his own business, but then, out of nowhere, a smell slapped in his face. His mom. He smelled his mom. 1,000 wires got crossed in his brain. He always had trouble processing information. But the smell, his mother floating in the breeze, did him in. He spun around looking for her. He couldn't find her. I should turn off my phone. I plugged it in.
You were told.
His memory broke. A repressed, shattered dyke. Suddenly he's back at Jonks and Brandy's again, covered in shit. Hungry and frightened, then oblivion. A blackness, an infinite rift in his mortal timeline. Then a light. A shimmering highness, paper white, blue and red and yellow. He woke a new man, a pirate, savior, deliverer. A deliverer of the good news, the parcels of peace and goodwill. He was a new man indeed, And he and Dr. Sunshine would spread the word. He was sure of this. In Mighty's mind, it was spring. He needed to get to his ship together. The winter had been cold and dark hard. He'd been holed up in a small inn on the edge of the Great Gowanus Canal. The ice was finally melting. Its ceaseless creaking made his muscles ache. He yearned for the freedom of the open sea. His only companion during those dark and dreary days the winter brought was Dr. Sunshine. They would talk by candlelight about the treasures the open sea would bring, plotting and scheming. They would sail down to the Bahamas and intercept tobacco ships, spice ships, slave ships. The riches knew no bounds. They only needed crew. Dr. Sunshine was put in charge of getting crew. Whitey made lists and outfitted the ship. Before long, they were ready to sail. Whitey was standing on the corner of Bergen and Hoyt when Dr. Sunshine showed up with 2 new crew members. Whitey was digging a trash can looking for rope. He found a mop head. What luck! The birds landed on the edge of the trash can. Whitey stood erect. The birds saluted him. He saluted back. Dr. Sunshine said, "Sir, this is Detective Rabbi and Moiler. They've signed on." Great, let's get to work. Untangle this rope." Whitey put the mop head on the sidewalk and spread it out. The birds went to work. They untangled the strands. Whitey took Dr. Sunshine aside and said, "These men look like good seafaring men. Can you get more?" "Of course, sir." "Well, good." Dr. Sunshine flew away. Whitey poked around in the trash can some more. He was looking for hardtack. He found some soggy saltines, drenched in coffee grounds. He smiled. They were still in their plastic package. He put them in his mail cart. He looked down at Detective Rabbi and Moiler. They were making progress on the mop. They seemed like a good crew. Things were looking ship-shape. An hour later, Whitey was sitting on the stoop next to the trash can. He'd called a break. Detective Rabbi and Moiler were swearing, at least in Whitey's mind. They were sitting on his knees. Whitey was giving them the rundown of the situation. "Okay, boys, it's gonna be a hard run. Do you know what parlay is?" The pigeons bobbed their heads. "Good. We're gonna fuck them bastards up. Are you too good with pistols?" The pigeons bobbed their heads. "Good. I'm gonna grow a mustache. You should too. That way we can light it on fire and shoot faster. Okay, let's get to work." Whitey went back to digging in the trash. Detective Rabbi and Moiler went back to unbraiding the mop head. Dr. Sunshine came back alone. He landed on the milk cart. Whitey looked at him. His face looked dejected. Whitey's shoulders dropped. He knew they must move on. In order to find more crew, they must move on. Whitey picked up the mop head. He stowed it in the mail cart. He told Detective Rabbi and Moiler to come aboard. They flew up and perched themselves on top of the mail cart. They saluted Whitey. He saluted back. He pushed the mail cart down the block. The next trash can was a bust. It was completely empty. Whitey spied a park down the way. He yelled, "Land ho!" Whitey took the birds into the park and found a bench. He was tired and needed some sleep. He took the blankets from the mail cart. The blankets were newspapers. He wedged himself under the park bench. It was dark now. The birds clucked around for a while before coming to bed. He was happy when they did. They were warm and nice. He was asleep before he knew it. The morning light shone through the slats of the park bench. The birds were already awake, clucking around, pecking around, biting the ground for food. Whitey got up and stretched. He yawned and folded the newspaper blankets. He put them in the mail cart. He went over to the drinking fountain. He took a drink. He brushed his teeth with his index finger. He pulled his pants down and washed his genitals and his ass. The morning sun felt nice on his bottom. He stood there for a second, drying off. His balls felt heavy and his penis became stiff. Dr. Sunshine flew up and landed on his erect perch. Whitey said, "Well, good morning, Dr. Sunshine. I trust you slept well." I did, sir. I trust you did too." Whitey's penis deflated. Dr. Sunshine held on as the perch disappeared. Dr. Sunshine was at a weird angle when he finally let go. He opened his wings and fluttered to the ground. Whitey pulled up his pants. He was dry enough. His penis hurt from Dr. Sunshine's claws. He was bleeding, but he didn't mind. Pirates don't mind about bloody dicks. That's not what pirates do. Dr. Sunshine cooed around for a bit while Whitey made sure he had all his things. Detective Rabbi and Moyler had already gone off to recruit more crew. They would meet up later at the port, Whitey decided. He told Dr. Sunshine to come aboard. Dr. Sunshine flew up onto the cart. Whitey whistled a dirge, and they were off. Call and response. Yo ho ho and a bottle of rum, followed by chirp and chirp and chirp and chirp. They cruised the streets looking for victuals. At one garbage can, they found a half-eaten hot dog and a bottle of urine. Whitey poured the urine out into the gutter. He looked down into the bottle and declared the vessel of poor quality and threw it back in the trash can. The hot dog passed muster. On the next corner, the trash can only had newspaper. The newspaper held dog shit. Whitey shook his head. The quality of blankets these days, right, Dr. Sunshine? Dr. Sunshine bobbed his head. There were 2 long blocks before they got to the canal. They would set up camp and wait for Detective Rabbi and Moyler. Whitey was nervous that it was getting late in the season. He was worried about provisions, but he knew he needed crew. He and Dr. Sunshine sat down waiting. The sun slowly crept across the early morning sky. Dr. Sunshine got bored and flew off, boinked some babes. Whitey sat there, listening to the water slowly pass by, bending the grass that was growing on the edge. He licked the ketchup and mustard from the hot dog he had acquired, careful not to eat the meat, even though he wanted to. 2 hours went by. Whitey fell asleep with boredom. He woke up to a little bouncing on his stomach. There were 3 birds hopping around. One was Detective Rabbi and one was Moyler. The other one was unknown to Whitey. Detective Rabbi told Whitey his name. "This is the doctor. We got crew. Where's Dr. Sunshine?" He went to boink some babes. "Good to meet you. I'm Captain Whitey. Welcome aboard." Whitey saluted them. They saluted him back. Whitey sat up. The birds jumped to the ground. They bobbed and preened themselves. They took shits. Detective Rabbi packed at some things. The air smelled like oil and burned garlic. "We still need victuals. You guys know where to get some?" "I'm coming up empty," the doctor said. "I know this place just down the road. Donuts and bagels. Show me." Captain Whitey stood up. The birds hopped on top of his cart. He pushed them towards the place that the doctor knew about. The sun was hot now. The going was slow. Captain Whitey hoped that Dr. Sunshine would be able to find him when he was done boinking the girls. He had a full crew now. He needed victuals, and suddenly he realized he needed weapons. But who has weapons? He decided he would think about this later. Now victuals, weapons after. Part of him relaxed, but another part of him was on edge. The doctor was a talker. He liked to talk. He made noise after noise after noise. He talked. "Where are we going? You know what I think of that? It smells pretty bad. Did you ever think about that? What is that smell? I mean, that's a pretty bad smell. What's that smell? Do you like smells? I like smells. How come nobody asked me how I'm feeling? What's that over there? Would I look like a jerk? How come I smell that and you can't?" "Jesus, doctor, drop it," Moyler said. "Drop what? I'm just saying. You ever say something? See something, say something. That's my motto. Ugh, you're gonna get punched. Punch, I love punch. Wine, blueberry, fruit punch. the combo punch watermelon. The talker talked himself into a frenzy. He flew away squawking into the air. Every breath, sigh, everybody breathed a sigh of relief. Captain Whitey said, "What the hell was that? He coming back?" "He always comes back," Moiler said. "Oh, Lord." They found themselves at the donut and bagel depository. Trash can was full of hardtack. Whitey took a bag from the dumpster. They were ready to set sail. He threw the bag over his shoulder. They walked back to the canal to wait for Dr. Sunshine. The walk was nice and quiet since the talker was gone. Whitey hoped that Dr. Sunshine was done boinking the girls and would come help him find some weapons. A new recruit flew down and landed on the mail cart. A weird bird. He didn't coo like the others. Instead, he just made beeping noises. Captain Whitey decided to call him Beeper. Beeper seemed nice and helpful. Detective Rabbi was stoic, and Moiler seemed nice and angry. He had a good crew. Captain Whitey did. The only thing he was missing was a cabin boy.
Please help yourself to a little whiskey. There's some poet right over here.
Yeah, there's a whiskey. Thank you, Joey. So my name is Stefan Ovrak, and I'll be reading from Adventures of Bastard and M.E. I'm starting at chapter 5. What's already occurred is that Bastard gets a phone call from somebody about a job, and he calls this business called Free Enterprise 999, and you'll learn about that. Post-Center Day 2, chapter 5. The F and the E do not stand for fuck everyone. The Brain Liver Cafe was an obnoxious place for tight-assed business persons and rehabilitated convicted anti-conspirator leprechauns. Bastard was there to meet with Des, the lady from the FE 999 telephone. He didn't have to wait for her long enough to say that he really actually waited. For, presently, Des appeared in a calm flurry, as if the wind had escorted her, carried her and deposited her in the chair at the table across from Bastard. "Did you want Dilaudid or a job?" she aimed and fired. "Both." "Don't bullshit me," she proclaimed sadly. "I have half a circle for me break time. What did you want? Why did you want to see me? And more importantly, how did you know that I wanted to see you?" She glanced around the room nervously and unbelievably. "And how did I know that I wanted to see you?" Bastard thought that last question was unnecessary and silly, but he didn't say so out loud. "That was some risk you took. You're lucky it wasn't fatal." "We always know," Bastard bullshat like a true Joker-man infidel, "but that's not important." Precisely upon completing that last sentence, he resumed, "Do you like your job, Des?" I stayed silent. "I asked you not to waste my measure, my valuable waste, my me time." She inhaled a heavy load and looked down at her dew-baked sunflower leopard-tail muffin tops. Then back at Bastard's two eyes, she sighed. "Do you want to start over, or should I walk out now?" "All right, lady, easy. I'll connect the lines for as straight a dot as possible to you, for you, so that we may reach it sooner, together. To answer your question, I want to know about this rent your brain business. What do you know?" "It expired for..." "Now you're bullshitting me," he cut her off. Des started bleeding. "You needn't have done that," blushing. "Maybe I did," he exulted. She smirked, and Bastard began to cry. Des donated him her napkin, and they fell in love. "And who are you again?" she asked. "Which one are you? Why am I here? Why am I talking with you? Why am I?" "You know, I could never figure out the answer to that last one. Can't say. I'd like to know why I am I." "You're a smartass. And now you're playing me," Bastard reshuffling his feet. He awkwardly shifted his focus from one hand to the other, as he was supporting the weight of his body with an arm tightening come hand pressing down on the seat up in an effort to ease his back pain. You charged my voice, and I told you my name. You know who I am, and you know full well what I'm full of. Yeah, shit. Bastard went to poop. When he returned, the reason I wanted to talk to you, after all these moon ages, is to make you an offer. It's pretty straight. We need information. You have access to this information, so we need your help. And if you help us, we will be very grateful. He wasn't sure if that was enticing enough. Des didn't speak. Bastard looked in her green, gray, brown, hazel eyes and formed an even smile. The woman before him was absolutely fucking gorgeous. He watched her as she touched her silver gray hair and kind of moved it, brushing a few soft stalks away from her eyes. He did not yet know that her silver gray hair was blonde at night. Some of the strays graced her pitted, dark olive skin face, while some rested. Others caressed her neatly formed shoulders with the suppleness that only hair fingers can touch. An angular, but not offensively so, nose accentuated her uprisen cheekbones and carefully landscaped eyebrows and lashes. She wore a body that would make any man's head turn twice. Bastard broke some 10 necks before he accepted that this was a natural reaction. She had yet to answer. He wasn't sure if she was expecting him to continue. He began to question whether or not he had said anything. Then he bolstered, "Furthermore, I promise you enormous balls if you cooperate. And if we succeed, you will be rewarded beyond your wildest dreams. Unless your dreams are really, really wild. But maybe even still." He pulled out and lit a cigarette in an attempt to distract himself. He wasn't sure what she was playing at, if she was playing at all, which he was pretty sure she was. "And I will personally welcome you into..." The sandwiches arrived, though no one had ordered them. The server set the parts on the table, and Bastard and Des began to put them together. They laughed during this assemblage, parlaying stories about childhood occurrences, which Bastard had to invent since he had never been a child. They fell in love with each other again. He placed a sliver of a ridged pickle slice on her tongue, which naturally existed inside her mouth, beyond her lips, in a moist cavity in her face. I looked at mine, but it remained on the plate, silent. When Des finished eating, Bastard properly wiped his mouth with a napkin. Then she said, "Okay." "Word? Fucking great. First, I'm curious, is your name short for something? Sorry I misspelled the pronunciation earlier." It's not that Bastard couldn't spell, he'd just forgotten her name. "Is it Des? Despy, short for Despica. Last name Bell. Only my closest loved ones call me Despica Bell. Others call me Despy. To even others, it's Des." That's a beautiful sequence. "Stop. Go. I said I'm down." "Okay. So, what the fuck is Free Enterprise 999? Who's behind it? And why do they hyphenate free and enterprise? It makes no sense. And what are they doing with the brains that they rent?" "I hope I'm doing the right thing," she shuddered, but not necessarily reflexively. "First of all, Free Enterprise 999 has no business with that hyphen. And the rent-your-brain business? It's mental slavery capitalism," she dropped. "The company tempts the people with balls, and the people come because the people always want balls. They voluntarily give up their brains for 1 week. During that week, the patients/patrons are neutralized, and FE 999 has unlimited access to their brains." Bastard didn't say anything. "Our doctors surgically implant various neo-neurological receptors of our own design. These artificial receptors communicate with the brain. They communicate whatever we've programmed." She quickly fingered her ear canal. "The invasive surgical procedure takes about a week, after which we release the suckers with their balls." Then, from FE999's neurotransmission center, we begin the individualized and invisible broadcasts of specific sonic stimuli, which tackle and tickle the implanted receptors. Des paused for effect. It was good, because it made her next sentence sound more important. Do you get it yet? FE999 is able to impose physiological and psychological dependency without the introduction of any physical chemical. Addiction, enslavement for mind control for profit. When we cease transmitting to them, they begin to suffer a debilitating withdrawal, seemingly inexplicably. They need help, and they come to us. They know that FE999 will provide them with free medical care and free script writing. Of course, the newly addicted pay for the drugs, which they purchase exclusively from our licensed pharmaceutical distribution center. We recoup that 1,000 balls within days. It's supply and demand, and we set the demand for our supply. We know what they need, and we have what they need. So we own them. Guaranteed, lifetime, custom-made consumers. We control their brains. She took a deep breath, for she had used a lot of words. It's really pretty brilliant. I agree, because he did. Got it? She inquired finally but softly. I think so, maybe. For sure though, Bastard wondered. His mind thoughts rapidly proceeded through all probable scenarios of possible realities that might result from FE999's machinations. He processed imagined intentions and effectualizations and meanings. I must admit, it's very clever. Who's behind it? Next up is Margaret.
Hello everyone, I am Margaret, also known as MDF. Just because my name is long. Can you guys hear me okay in the back? Yeah. So I'm going to be reading the first section of my little memoir called Nick Point. Nick Point, an abrupt change in slope or gradient of a river, often characterized by waterfalls or rapids over hard rock areas, caused by an uplift of land or a drop in sea level, leading to rejuvenation. I fell in love with my high schooler science teacher when I was 14, and even my best friend laughed. I stole the would-be geologist's lead sinker plumb bob from his classroom and hung it in my locker. Early infatuation's vertical reference line. When his coffee cup shattered by accident one study hall morning, I thought about taking a shard from the garbage. I'm attracted to men more familiar than most with the crack up of pieces, the subject of parts swept away. Which of the details together amount to a cause? How can anyone say where the story begins? Whisper, with the father whose 2 little brothers died when he was a boy. No, say, with the mother who lost her footing and fell 2 stories to rocks when she was a girl. Say, in the city where you, child, were born. Say none of these things. Start there. All fall, I write letters to Paul Calder Fisk, who lives in an indigo house on Bridge Street, 2 blocks up from the river where, in September, the salmon run. All fall, Paul's instincts are slipstream, boulder bullet in a flume of brown. Chemical erosion, oxidation, rust. There's lead in the gun factory water where teenagers come of age. I met Paul at a church event 11 days before I turned 16. I shaved my teenage pubic hair for him in the bathtub the night before he visited my house the first time, 3 weeks in. He had asked me over the phone to do it. In an hour, 30 minutes before I made him come in my bed, my parents downstairs, he looked at me smooth and said, I really feel like a pedophile now. Something pulled open gently in the abiding dark. Later, in the second floor storage room at his father's house, He pressed me wet against the wall next to the baby things no longer used. Who should be loved, and how much? We came to know each other better in the front porch days, my legs across his lap, passing our time easily on the couch in the shade. Our paternal grandfathers were ball turret gunners and B-24 liberators in World War II. 30 missions, 50 missions. When my grandfather flunked out of flight school, they assigned him to the bubble at the bottom of the plane. Later, I'd send Paul a CD with this one song on it that said, "I think of you and think of flying." Paul gives me a photograph from his childhood, sullied a little with circular scuffs, as if once caught under a spinning chair's foot, a studded snow tire turning in place on a concrete drive. In fleece footy pajamas, Paul holds a new pair of roller skates up, 4 chunky wheels and a red rubber crutch foot brake on each. The boy I will love one day smiles brightly, even here, in spite of some poverty of spirit, yet unnamed, hovering just outside the frame. When Paul was a boy and shattered his hand playing in the street, did he run and plunge it into the river to slow the swelling? Did he cry before his father consented days later to drive him to the hospital? The first answer he gave me when we met about the scar, I punched through my friend's football mask, the rough and shiny webbing zipping up his hand. A stone wall holds up the corner of Paul's yard. Does he still walk past it to sit by the water when the days get cold? Is he still afraid of being on the crumbling jumping bridge when it collapses? Or does he find sanctuary there? What happens to the permanent metal screws in your bones when you grow? It's the rock bottom beneath the barreling current, the fight of his life that galvanizes Paul's phosphorescent heart and salmon skin. I know something's wrong, but not what. How do I admit to missing the signs? Tweet, March, Paul, getting harder and harder lately to do the right thing. Vacation halfway around the world, 12 hours ahead that spring, in the gazebo dining room where the stray gray cat, now tame, with the lightning bolt tail broken, leaves a footprint on the red linen napkin at the top of the pile. I will return after the tsunami wipes this breakfast bar into the sea. Summer, Paul, MDMA, 3,4-methylenedioxymethamphetamine, popularly known as ecstasy, is a synthetic psychoactive drug that has similarities to both the stimulant amphetamine and the hallucinogen mescaline. It produces feelings of increased energy, euphoria, emotional warmth and empathy toward others, and distortions in sensory and time perceptions. The popular term Molly, slang for molecular, refers to the pure crystalline powder form of MDMA, usually sold in capsules. Summer, Paul, his father calls. The connection is bad. His father takes him socks and shirts in jail and the seasons of my next number of years, his next number of nights in a place where even the convicts would cut him if they could, our telescope in reverse. The lines that have transmitted this news hang heavy over our heads and distort the graying distance of the sky on purpose. I'd have written another man off in seconds for so much less. He writes me one response, one initial missive on yellow line jail paper exposing what he's done, and one letter more, ever, only. An incongruous mix of curved capitals and lowercase littles. He swears he only looked. The adult and the 8-year-old girl. He and I both know how much worse it could have been. Feeling, they will commit him, I am committed, I commit his crime for him by whispering his childhood nickname in his ear. I never stop wanting him. I dream him on my body, heavy and warm like stones in a tranquil room. Truth, I can't think about him when I masturbate. There are flashes of children. I dream him in my dress at the river. Pound's translation of Exile's letter sewn into the seams. He is released into his father's care. In the middle of October, I cross the state before dawn in dangerous love, Paul flooding my system as the day's events unfold. Mixtape, my grandmother's funeral. Hugs are okay, touches, and shouldn't they be? What part of me is still always a child? I have a hard time discerning what is appropriate. I know if you rub a dog too long in one spot, it hurts. Why does every part of this moment, except the dying, feel so wrong? Venison on the counter above the peg and plank floors they've built themselves. Paul labels the Ziploc bags. Steak, he writes, childish and defiant. There's a deer in the village that everybody loves, he says. She even has her own Facebook page, Bella Deer, look it up. Meat. Deer. He smells to me like blood and roughed up metal, like briny bones stripped and left out overnight. Cunt compliment, contraction. I have a lot of trouble reconciling reality with sense. Last year, my grandmother asked my father over Cheerios, do you know where this banana came from? And he said, yes, this store. I brought it over for you this morning, but she said, no. I happen to be the executive secretary of an international consortium of nations. And every month they send their dues. Sometimes they send money, and sometimes they send actual physical goods. For instance, this month, Japan sent this banana. We used to spend Thanksgiving with her when she lived alone, but she drank too much scotch and required my parents to sleep in separate beds. The last time I saw Paul weep. Now I take him jars of soup made during the week after work. His home is along the way to the town where my grandmother used to live. I want to trace his lightning lifeline, to warm the pins by friction I know are always cold, to blast the hiding place of distance out of which another person might have made a shield. I imagine the shell of him back behind the razor wire in the yard, secrets coursing out and open now, slicing their way to his family. My God. One day, when we're safe, we'll speak frankly of force. But for now, the stream table system has shifted, and I am afraid.
So we have some time for questions. If anyone would like to ask with the letters.
Lions.
We said we were gonna talk about, yeah, I'm the publisher, we said we were gonna talk about underground publishing, but I thought maybe like, what's there to say? Does anybody have anything they wanna know about underground publishing or experimental publishing? Or- Yeah.
I'd like to know, what audience specifically are you trying to target in your publishing?
We are looking for anything that would be rejected by we're looking for anti-establishment poems, poems, fiction, memoir, and are really just trying to find stuff that would be rejected, stuff that's doesn't meet the word count requirements, stuff that doesn't really fit neatly into genre conventions. There's a lot of amazing stuff out there that is roundly and routinely rejected, not based on quality, but just based on the fact that it doesn't fit tidily on the bookshelves.
It's good to know.
Anybody else? Anybody have any thoughts? It's good stuff, right? Yeah.
Besides reading in Missoula, Montana, how do you market it? How do you get the word out?
Well, reading at a real estate agency in Missoula, Montana is a really good way.
We're just trying to get our works in the homes of everyone.
Yeah, yeah. When people come,
Yeah, I mean, marketing books is hard, and it's, you know, it's especially hard to be an outsider publisher who still wants to sell books, obviously. So we do a lot of events. A lot of our events have musical accompaniment. So we perform, we perform in bars. It's more performative than reading in a bookshop. We have a lot of success doing that. We keep our operating expenses really low. If you assume that one's time is worth nothing, which is a safe assumption if you're a writer or a publisher, then we're able to do things like come out here because we can do so on the cheap. We don't spend a lot of money on marketing, but we do spend a lot of time, promoting ourselves. We're not a collective, but it's definitely an author-driven press.
I have a question. What would you say are the benefits to sort of making it up as you go along as opposed to taking a more traditional route, like as a publisher?
Well, I find that some of the benefits are, we're dealing in the business of disappointment, really. And, when you acknowledge that and kind of work with that and do it out of the love of the literature, then you have nothing to let down. Like, there's not a lot to lose, per se. So I feel like if you're pursuing literature for the love of what the book is and not for how well it's going to sell, then it gives you more motivation to keep plugging away at it. Thanks. You should have asked that before you signed your contract.
I should. Which I need a copy of.
Okay. Right on that. Anybody else have any thoughts? Anything? Is everyone here from Missoula? It's so great. It's cool to be
Thank
in
you
a
for
room
having
full of
us.
weirdos who like books.
Now, where are you from? Me too. You said no, right? You're not from Missoula?
From
Oh,
Bozeman.
and you are from?
Well, Washington.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Did we drive through that?
I don't know. It's dark. Did we drive through that?
On the way from Seattle?
You drove through, someone probably would have smacked you to the bottom of the line as you hit the outskirts of the county.
I remember that too.
Does anyone want a little more whiskey before you go back outside? Because it's chilly. Yeah.
I have a bit of an off-the-wall question.
Yeah.
In the 60s and 70s, there was an audio performer who went under the name of Now Nordine. You familiar with him?
No, I'm not.
He did almost stream of consciousness speech poems.
Oh, nice.
And the readings today reminded me very much of that. And I wondered if any of the authors had heard.
I've heard of him, but I haven't read or listened to his work. I've only read about it. Ned Nordine.
Pardon?
His name?
Now, N-O-W?
Now
Now.
Nordine.
Nordine.
There's another guy called Michael Pepe, who's Canadian, also working in about that time, who reminds me something of the way that these guys deliver this stuff. And I think that they've developed over the years a really unique style of reading, largely because they do often read with musicians, and so there's a cadence to what they're trying to do that I think makes the work really compelling and gripping, because it's really complicated stuff, and it's hard to understand what's going on just from 10 minutes of book, but I feel like doing it that way really allows you to catch on a little bit.
Well, it painted an incredible picture. I was
Good.
Thank
You may buy the books, they're for sale thanks to Shakespeare Company in the back of the room. Yeah.
For the authors, are these your first published books?
It is mine, yeah, absolutely. So I feel very, very lucky to have found such a wild publisher.
And this is my first novel that I didn't publish myself. So it's nice.
This is my fourth one with Whiskey Tit, and I got a cookbook coming out in November.
Louder, son.
I got a cookbook coming out in November.
No, it's exciting. It's really nice to be on this imprint. The books that Mia and Whiskey Tip puts out, they're all very different, but there's some, we work hard on our words. And it's nice, it's always nice to hear you guys read.
Sure. Are you all writers? Are some of you writers? Are there writers in the room? Do you publish? No. Don't publish with traditional presses. It's a
I
pain in the-
self-published my first novel 11 years ago, and the best thing that came out of that was being able to give it to her 2 years ago.
It's a pain in the
and
tits
getting
and
a
you'll be
contract
exploited
out
to
of
death.
that.
I came out of big publishing like in the mid-90s, and it was a horrible.
Where are you going?
I think that's when I actually published the book together because I pulled it 6 months later.
Yeah. Anyone else have anything?
I want to say something.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it goes back to the question that you asked now.
Yeah.
There's this line from this Herzog movie called Cobra Verde, where he says, "I have nothing to lose, so I answer to no one." And I feel like that is the ethos, really, of what she's doing. It's
Whiskey Tit.
Whiskey Tit.
It's a nice thing to say.
Yeah, that was the nicest thing
I have
you've said.
another question.
And she just
Are we gonna, is
It's
that
really
okay?
nice.
Yeah, go for
I'd
it.
like to talk to get out of
What's your question?
So it seems that even since I sort of came on board, you are growing. And so
Yeah.
what does that look like for somebody who's like fuck the system. You're getting bigger, and so what is
Well, we're getting bigger, but we're not making any money, so.
About that.
You're a government then.
I'm sorry?
You're a government then. You're getting bigger, but you're not.
She's the man.
I'm the man. I
She
am
is the man.
No, so what does growth look like for an outsider is a good question, because at some point, we're going to get to the point where we will have a book where someone will want the movie rights, or it'll be a bestseller and we'll have to figure out how to deal with that. Those are great problems to have. I have no, I'm a communist. I have no idea how to deal with that stuff. But I'm a communist who wants the writers to be able to eventually make a living off of it, hopefully, or if not, at least enjoy whatever successes might come to them. So, so the answer is I don't know what that looks like. Right now, it looks like me being incredibly overworked and like collapsing into exhaustion every night. And that's okay. That feels good.
Well, it's nice to have somebody who represents us personally. It's
Yeah.
nice to have somebody who actually thinks my shit is alright.
This shit is all right.
And it means a lot. So for me, there's already been a certain amount of success that somebody else published my second novel. And she believes in her writers, and she takes us out and tries to get ears and eyes. It's nice.
Yeah. So that's what we're up to. Yeah.
Are there specific genres you prefer to work with, or is it more a case by case?
I know literary fiction, I know magical realism. There are genres and there are styles of writing that I know particularly well. I know like metafiction. I mostly publish fiction and memoir because that's what I feel I'm kind of centered to, and that's what I feel like I have I'm a good arbiter of taste for those things. I'm gonna start publishing some poetry. I'm not a great arbiter of taste for poetry. I'm very much a lazy reader of poetry. But I have a poetry editor coming on board who very much shares the vision and is gonna take on that chunk of it. We're also thinking of starting up a children's imprint called Whiskey Tot. I'm also not a great arbiter of children's literature, but I have a child. I have a child, and I feel like it's important to equally make sure that the children get drunk in a safe and loving environment. Literarily drunk. That's a metaphor.
Preschool teacher, I highly recommend this course of action.
What's that?
I said as a preschool teacher, I highly recommend
Oh,
this
word.
course of action.
Oh, nice, great.
Give them a little
I would love
a
for
wee
you to read
dram.
some of my
my-
submissions.
A wee dram of experimental
My
literature.
daughter has somebody comes constantly to her school. It's like, oh yeah, I got a kid's book. You can buy it, just sign this book.
Wait,
Yeah.
what?
So there's like people like that they go to school. If you're doing children's books,
Right.
you can just go and like pretend like it's for the children.
I need to make
Parents
money.
buy
Make
this
money.
book.
That's great. Hustle the children.
So you have a web presence?
We have a bit of a web presence, and it's a little bit raw, but it does the job, and we sell books, and if you buy direct from us, obviously we make a little more money than if you buy, don't buy books on Amazon. Don't buy books on Amazon. Review books that you buy at other places on Amazon, but so we do have a web presence, and we sell directly. They are also on Amazon and everywhere else.
And do you have a business card?
I have a little bit of a brochure, and I have a little painting with some tips on it that you all are free to take, and a little bit of whiskey that you can help yourself to. Yeah,
I just wanted to compliment you on having books without DRM for sale.
thank you. I am very much anti-DRM. And for those of you who don't know, digital rights management is the stuff that Amazon puts on your ebook so that you can't share it with people. And why wouldn't you? The only advantage to reading your books is so that you can share them with, why wouldn't you share your books? So yeah, if you buy the e-version, we encourage you to send it around to all of your friends as well. Thank you for that.
Please spread the word.
Yeah, so thanks for coming. Again, it was really exciting to come to a weird town with a bunch of strangers and have people actually turn up. It's
Thank you.
super nice.
Yeah, and if anybody needs to charge their phone, there's a there, and there's one up over there.
I need to do that.
Yeah, so these guys, their books are for sale in the back, and I'm sure they'll write really perverted inscriptions for you if you want them to do so. Thank you again for coming.
Joey Truman, MBF Wedge,
Stefan.
Miette. Thank you guys.